those of you that are doctors, healers, physicians, all of you who are occupied with legitimately making other humans healthy, you should listen to what I have to say, because I actually know for a fact that if you were to simply practically apply very simple wisdom in your life and also as part of your profession, and thereby operate scientifically, you would be able to basically heal every patient you have with absolute certainty, and also you would be able to always be successful at accomplishing positive results in terms of your medical practice as it's related to other human beings. In other words, a patient would come to you and you could actually even simply perform the minimum amount of whatever medical work or even just healing practice, whether physical or metaphysical, so to say, and you would actually have your patients healed. And this would go on all the time. It would seem as if it was a miracle, even miracles upon miracles. Now, what I'm actually sharing with you is real. What it is it's actually real life science. The reason why what I'm telling you is possible and it's true and it should be accomplished, because think of how much good you could accomplish with wisdom, is because life is obviously very perfectly systematically arranged. All of us can see this, even in nature, okay? If you know how life works, you can make certain things work for a surety in life. This is simply wisdom, and it is thousands of years old, and it's contained in a book called Self-Mastery and Fate with the Cycles of Life by H. Spencer Lewis. So you should get a copy of this book and read and study what's written therein and begin to practically apply the wisdom in your life, and you will see how you will become very, very legitimately prosperous and highly successful at everything that you are busy with and seek to accomplish. It will simply work. So imagine being a doctor and having a patient, and then speaking with the patient, and then just being able to prescribe the most simplest, easiest, most natural form of medical, therapy, remedy, treatment, whatever it is, with absolutely no side effects and a complete and totally guaranteed successful, positive result, resulting in whatever it is that has to be healed being healed with minimal impact on the already existing life form and its functions. Okay? This is possible. See, for thousands of years, intelligent human beings have observed nature and observed and identified certain orderly patterns and documented these. And this is also for humanity to reach and actually realize and manifest, and then hopefully collectively benefit from its highest potential. And that's exactly what we're working on. And you should join us in this process. What I'm telling you is the truth. It's very simply that you see that life is cyclical, and there are certain cycles of life that are very good for healing. And if you practice healing basically in the right cycles, the results are positive. Because of the fact that life is cyclical, and the nature of life and what is automatically brought forth by life and supported so as to be and to live and to exist and so on, this is systematical. So it's as if that providence is giving different types of providence at different times. Now we can see basic logical and totally obvious and true examples of this with, for example, the four seasons or daytime versus nighttime. These are all examples of how life works systematically and how there's a particularly good time for every good thing to be accomplished. Now, the basic knowledge for you to become a doctor or a physician or a healer or a medical practitioner or medical doctor who can basically always heal his patients with the most simplest methods and without like any side effects potentially. It's just simply the case that you would have to read and study about the cycles of life, learn to actually practice the following discipline every day. You'd have to, and all you must in fact do is this. You have to look at the cycles of life that you are in yourself, because every human, I'll explain this for a second, every human being is in different cycles of life at all times. These change every 3 hours, or every 3 hours and 25 minutes, or every 3.5 days, or also every 52 days, for example, or every 7 years. And this basically goes on and on for like the human earthly existence lifespan from about 0 to 144 years. Okay, so what's happening is that you first of all have to watch the cycles of life that you are in personally. Now, as I said, there's about 9 different cycles that are relevant to every human being at any given point in time. They basically change from the shortest every 3 hours. And then, every 12 hours, like you've got a daily period of 3 hours, 25 minutes, where there are 7 a day. Okay. Now, then you have a short lunar unit of 12 hours and a long lunar unit of 3.5 days. Then you have an annual life cycle period of 52 days, whereof there are 7 a year, where this year always starts on your birthday, right? Okay. Then you have the simple overall period of human life from 0 to 144 years divided into segments of 7. Now, you simply must have an overview of the cycles of life that you are in. Pay attention to these because they change. So one of them changes every 3 hours. Particularly the shortest unit of the short lunar unit of 12 hours that is visible as the tides, for example. So what I'm saying is that you have to be circumspect and pay attention to the cycles of life that you're in. And so every 3 hours, you always know the following. Listen, you always know the daily period of 3 hours, 25 minutes that you're in, right? Whereof there are 7 a day, okay? Ranging from basically a categorization of A to G, 7 different ones. So every 3 hours, you're checking, keeping an overview of the daily period of 3 hours, 25 minutes that you're in right now, then the short lunar unit of 3 hours that's either positive or negative, then the 3.5 day long lunar unit that is also either positive or negative, and then the 52-day annual life cycle period that you're in right now, whereof, like I said, there's 7 52-day annual life cycle periods that make a 365-day year, and that's your annual cycle of life that always starts on your birthday, ends just before your birthday, and always starts on your birthday. And then also, you're going to be in a certain simple overall period of human life, based on your age, obviously, that is from 0 to 144 years, and there's segments of 7 in these. Now, it is actually possible for the average person to gain proficiency in this process of what is called self-mastery within days, perhaps even months, based on how much time you invest into it at the right times, because then it will be successful, versus if it's at the wrong time, it won't be successful. It's a basic law in nature. You can see this everywhere. There's a time when the weather is good and it's propitious for something, and there's a time when it's not good and it's not propitious for something. It's just like having the tides at the ocean. There's a tide that, is rising or falling, and it's all part of how life is cyclical and systematic. So the best thing that you can do is just simply get a copy of the book, Self-Mastery and Fate with the Cycles of Life, and then read and study it. And as it's related to your particular profession, for example, as a doctor, you look for the cycles of life that you are in or that are upcoming, and then you sort of coordinate your earth, human, and life activity, such as your work, to be within these periods, because then the success of it is guaranteed. So look, first of all, while I mentioned the fact that life is cyclical, it is true. Every single human being, because of having a different birthday, right, is in fact in different cycles of life. At the same time, all of life is in fact cyclically the same for every human being, in terms of how there are 7 daily periods of the cycles of life, and there are 7 days that make a strong, what they call the week. So while every individual human being is in different life cycles than someone else, because they were all born at different times, because your overall simple period of human life starts when you were born and take your first breath. So every person is in a little bit different life cycles than someone else. At the same time, though, the cycles of life that are like the daily periods of the cycles of life, or the lunar short and long units, for example, these are actually the same for everybody, because that is part of how this heavens and earth plane is operating according to a certain universally fixated system where, like, the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. This happens every day, everywhere, basically speaking. Okay? So you have to monitor the cycles of life that you are in as an individual, first of all, then operate in harmony with them, and you'll be as maximally successful as possible. Now, why is this relevant? Okay, so imagine you're a doctor, right? You have an office. A patient has an appointment with you. Patient says, I have this and this and that. So first of all, this appointment has to be scheduled in a daily period where it'll be propitious for healing or therapeutic methods. That will be in a D period of the daily periods of the cycles of life. For example, today, we're actually in one right now. On the 20th of May, 2025, on a Tuesday evening at about 6:54 p.m., so on a Tuesday from 5:08 p.m. to 8:34 p.m. in the evening, it is a D period. It's a good time for healing or therapeutic methods, right? And also, a very important note and a point of order for all of you, dear viewers, guests, friends, family, everyone, you absolutely have to use the winter time calculation of time at all times, all year round. Because if you use the summertime calculation of time, when the clocks get set forward on, if I'm correct, March 31st, and then they get set back an hour in October, what happens is that, see, natural linear time, as it's based on how the universe systematically, perfectly, geometrically progresses, does not jump forward by an hour and then return back an hour twice a year. That is absolute nonsense. So you always have to use the wintertime reading of time, even during the summertime, because that tells you what time it really is. And this is important because, as I said, everything in life and in the universe is systematically, geometrically, perfectly orderly progressing. There's no jumping forward in the future for an hour and then returning back again. It doesn't happen like that. And if you don't use the winter time all the time, the problem is that you're looking at a fictitious, artificial, and potentially dangerous condition. Because look, as I said, every day you have 7 daily periods of the cycles of life of 3 hours and 25 minutes.